trees. Relationships, sensual nourishment. Obviously food, the kind of food that we cook and eat, or catch and eat, the things we drink. Water is actually the only thing that really hydrates us. Other things may think we're quenching our thirst, but reality is that we actually have to assimilate those things in a different way. Whereas if we drink water, that's readily assimilated into the body. So to hydrate, it's natural water that you need. If you're a fan of Masaru Emoto, then you stand your water on a placemat or something with the words written on the placemat so that they face into the water. Or you carry around a bottle of the words written down and taped to the bottle, facing in, not because water can read, but because it's you putting your intention into the water. Masaru Emoto in his book said that love and gratitude were the most powerful words to use to harmonize the water crystals. I remember one drop of that harmonic water, which he called Hado water, spelt H-A-D-O. Hado water. One drop of Hado water will affect every water molecule in your body. So if you put a drop of Hado water, which has been harmonically synchronized or orchestrated, if you like, into your body, the theory is, and he did prove it as well, to my satisfaction, that the water molecules in your body become harmonized, and therefore it's easier for your body to throw off conditions, or certainly some things can't be thrown off so easily, but they can be encouraged to change. And I think it's in Wayne Dyer's book, isn't it? Change your thoughts, change your life. Doesn't he say right at the beginning, come on, let's just have a quick look, something about everything changes? Here it is, it's Bernard Shaw. Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. So it's really important. We build ourselves into what we call reality, and there's very strong argument to suggest that most things, no matter how real they are to us, are supposed to be illusions. So I don't know, that's quite an interesting debate really, but not one for me at this time of night. Probably more akin to Rhiannon and her discussion group. But it is true, progress is impossible without change. And if we can't change our minds and become flexible, it's very difficult for the body to make changes. So, that's nourishment then. Water, air, food and drink, sensual nourishment, relationships, very important. Then we went on to talk about the meridian system of the body and the body organs. There being 10 organs and 2 functions. The functions that are not recognized by Western medicine at all, although the organ system is the same. And the functions are triple heater, or the Chinese call it the Sanjiao, and the heart protector. Heart protector is like a bouncer in a nightclub. Sanjiao, the triple heater, is like 3 maintenance men racing around your body, basically adjusting the temperatures to suit the environment, within and without. So your chest above your nipple line is the upper jiao. Jiao, spelt J-I-A-O. The jiao in China is, yes, don't we all, Gina, it means region. In fact, the currency when I was there was called, I think it's yen and jiao, I can't remember. I remember being charged so many jiao on the Great Wall of China when I was there. So the 3 jiao of the body are the upper body, which I say above the nipples basically, the epigastrium, which is under the chest, under the diaphragm, and the lower abdomen. So upper, mid-region and lower So each of the triple heater, each of the three heater maintenance men, if you like, or maintenance women, takes an area each, and their job is to harmonize, balance, like a thermostat, really. And that makes sense because, for example, if your stomach juices are not at the right temperature, you can't digest your food. So it's very important for that middle jiao area to be racing about sorting things out. And if they're not able to, very often it's the heart protector and triple heater that get hit first in our culture, then things aren't assimilated as effectively. And triple heater, the heart protector, known as the bouncer in the nightclub, the Chinese translation is basically to protect the heart from insults and injury. And again, all too often in our culture, it's not able to keep up, and it doesn't do that. So things get through the heart protector and hit the heart. And that's when people tend to come to people like me, because nothing else fixes them. So they try everything else, and then they usually find people like me as a last resort. And we clear a few blocks, and hey presto, things begin to change. So that's a rundown of where we've been. After we did the organ system, looking at the deficiencies, looking at the non-physical realm and the physical realm, what caused the problems, how to fix them in general terms, we then come to what's called the substances in Chinese medicine, and they are qi, blood, and essence. And we talked about the different forms of qi. Each organ has its own qi, like stomach qi and lung qi and kidney qi. And then we talked about blood, and again, organs have their own blood, stomach blood, liver blood. Very often liver blood is deficient, particularly deficient. Also in terms of qi, there is nobody in our culture that is in excess. Every person is deemed to be deficient. So the acupuncturists work constantly, or any kind of medicine practitioner, Oriental particularly. Their job is to balance the qi, harmonize the system, so it stands the best chance of rectifying problems. In China, in the old days, you paid for your acupuncture, but if you became sick, you didn't pay, because it was deemed to be a preventative. So if it wasn't preventing, then the acupuncturist wasn't doing their job, and so they didn't get paid. They had to put you back together again. In our culture, which is very much a culture of breakdown instead of a culture of maintenance, obviously it's the other way around, and we do need to be paid. Well, hopefully, not many people want to pay, I have to say. They'd much rather do other things. So, that's where we are today. I'm going to go straight in now to just a little part about stagnation of qi and blood, because as I said at the beginning, very often the two problems go together. So qi stagnates when the flow of creative being is stopped, for whatever reason, lifestyle, stress, major trauma, anything can stop the flow. And when it's stagnant, any aspect of harmonious flow can be affected. We can feel frustrated and indecisive or depressed in response to the constraint of our freedom to be ourselves. Physically, we can experience uncomfortable digestion, irregular, painful menstruation, headaches, tenderness between the ribs, or any kind of pain, joint pain particularly prevalent in our society. Qi stagnation underlies all kinds of physical difficulty, from chronic intestinal disorder. This sounds very familiar to me. Anyway, I'll go on. I may be repeating some of it. From chronic intestinal disorder like gastritis, cholecystitis and irritable bowel, through to dysmenorrhea, premenstrual syndrome, pelvic. Didn't we do this last time? This is very familiar. Does anybody remember this? KJ, you usually remember. Michael, you remember, do you? You want me to go on? Okay. So yeah, I don't think I've actually done it a few times, but the thing is, a lot of these subjects can be repeated because obviously we talked about qi before. We talked about stagnant qi. This is where we're putting stagnant qi and stagnant blood together. So it may well be that the information is partly duplicated due to that. Anyway, as I said, the problem that involves stagnation of natural flow can said to be a form of qi stagnation, and left unattended for too long, it turns into heat. I have read this. I remember specifically doing it. Stagnant blood arises from qi stagnation, from the influence of wind, damp or cold obstructing the meridians. So also that can be a result of injury rupturing the blood vessels, like bruising, etc. Stagnant blood in the heart, I'll make it abbreviated. Potentially dangerous, causing heart pain, risking heart attack. And interestingly, some recent research has explored potential benefit of heart attack for people with blockage around their heart. A heart attack can be an attempt by the body to clear the obstruction, and if successful, people will have better circulation. When the blood is stagnant, vital nourishment and moisture are prevented from reaching the place where it's congealed. So very important not to allow this condition to carry on. With my overriding need in clinic, if someone has stagnant blood, is to clear it, to try and get it moving. I've talked about how we become stagnant before. Because we talked about it being the result of constraint, the realm of the psyche, subtle shifting ways where we stifle who we are. And constraint arises from the relationship we have. Yes, we have had it. I've mentioned the growing edges of our being before. Patterns of constraint penetrate deeper and deeper, and then they become stagnation. And then we get increasingly physical manifestations, and that's the second level of manifestation. For people, the original or the origin of a physical problem is a much earlier psychological struggle, which becomes buried and hidden from awareness. All patterns of stagnation have some emotional root and are ultimately connected to the liver, whose role is the smooth flow of qi. We recognize it by abdominal distension, wandering pain, depression, irritability, volatile mood, frequent sighing. Anyone who comes in and goes all the time, it's like a steam engine letting off steam because they have stagnation. They're having to let it out, or they'd explode sometimes. The liver is the most commonly affected organ, but qi stagnation can affect the other organs as well, and blood stagnation is recognized by stabbing pain. I remember saying that, and I also said it was usually fixed in one location. You can also see purple lips and a tongue. You can have fixed abdominal lumps, bleeding with dark blood, and a tendency towards blood clots, pain and clotting at the onset of menstruation. There are a lot of young people, young women like that. And again, the liver is the most commonly affected organ, but the heart and the uterus are also affected. So if any of you have got young children, or not so much young children, but also teenagers, that are wandering around with naked midriffs and exposed kidneys, I don't know what they're doing these days, but I can remember when my child was at school, the young girls walking around showing their pubic hair, if they had any. Their jeans were so low. And then the next thing is they're sitting on a cold wall for their break, drinking fizzy drinks in all weathers, sitting on damp ground. The boys sitting on damp ground playing games, football and rugby and things, in little skimpy shorts, sitting on the ground waiting for their turn, freezing their testicles, and the girls freezing up into their uteruses, and they wonder why the young people are not so fertile, or they're having damaged babies. You know, they're breathing in xenoestrogens, they're eating damaged food, and they're freezing their reproductive areas. So really, really not good for them. Think about the Chinese with their clothing and their obi that they wear around their back. The original use for the obi was to store the hot water bottles to keep their kidneys warm. Yeah, very important actually. The older people kind of knew. And you know, I went to sea, in my 30s I was married to a merchant navy officer for a while, and I went to sea with him. And I wasn't really into this kind of stuff then at all. I hadn't started my acupuncture. I was a healer, but I didn't really know much about anything. And I remember he was a little bit older than me, but he was certainly a seasoned sailor. And he said to me when we were in the tropics, never ever sleep without covering your lower abdomen. You must have something over, you know, a towel or something. And he was completely right, of course. The root of your energy is your dantian. And he was insisting that that was covered. Because although we were in the tropics, we did have air conditioning on the ship when it was running. So very important, wherever you live in the world, always have your lower abdomen warm. You could be sweltering in the desert, you know, freezing to death somewhere else. Just make sure that that lower part of you from your navel down is covered. So very important if you've got, yes, hot bum, and but not too much heat, mind, that's not good for you either. You don't want to heat up those testicles. Hot testicles are not good. So I'm told, anyway. Not that I would know from personal experience. So clearing stagnation, well, obviously, or maybe I do know. Oh, right. Oh, interesting. I mean, I know with Tai Chi, you know, everything is important, you know, even to this extent to which your fingers turn up when you're doing the moves. Because if you have them, like my hands, if I put my hands flat on the table and extend them, my fingers go up at 45 degrees off the table because I've got fingers that bend backwards naturally. That's not good. If I was doing Tai Chi, I was made to keep them flat in terms of extending them and channeling the chi. It wasn't to be done that in the natural flow of my hand. I had to bring it back down. So stagnation, as I said, it must be moved. You have to move to get rid of this. It makes sense, really. If you've got a blocked drain, you have to move it. At the psychological level, this means transforming the stuck places in the psyche through whatever means we can. Relationships, any other form of therapy. At a physical level, we need to move in ways that are expressive and in ways that break through subdued patterns of shallow breathing and muscular tension. This could be dancing, running, swimming, playing sport, or any activity that galvanizes the system into action, breaking away from inertia. Now, this is interesting because I've just been watching the Drax Files, having another look at that Parkinson's video that Barbie Alchemy did with her 87-year-old mother. And I was particularly noticing the eyes of the 87-year-old mother when she was playing in Second Life as she's Fran's Serenade. If any of you have been over and met these people, they do a wonderful job raising money. And I was watching the mother. I have to say her screen was fantastic, something like 46-inch screen. Wouldn't that be wonderful to have Second Life on a 46-inch screen? I couldn't imagine that. But, you know, when she was a mermaid, her little eyes lit up. Her 87-year-old body was incredibly dynamic. You know, her whole life turned around in that moment, and she was transformed. And, of course, you know, she can't do what she used to do. You know, I can't do what I used to do. But when I'm building here, or I'm swimming under the water, or I'm dancing, you know, I'm actually in there doing it. And you all know because you're all in Second Life. So, you know, you no doubt have experienced similar things. You know, when we used to do Tai Chi on the beach, I'm sure Jenla and Sarah's Qigong is the same, and when we've done some yoga, you know, and when I do Reiki down below here, you know, the energy is really moving. So we may be becoming older, and maybe less able to do things. You know, I can't dance all night anymore in my real life, but my heart wants to do it, and my mind wants to do it. And I'm very much minded of what my mother said when she was my age. In fact, she died just about my age. And she said, my name is Barbara, and she said, Bar, when you get older, you don't actually feel any different. You just can't do the same things. And I remember thinking, oh, here she goes again. I was quite, well, I wasn't rude to her, but in my mind I was. And I've never forgotten it, really, because, I'm here now, and I can honestly say, well, Mum, you were right. I don't feel any different. I feel just as soppy as I did when I was, 30, I guess. And I still want to do all those things, and my son still thinks I'm crazy when I dance around the room and shake my hair all about. Nothing like an old fool, really. But the heart wants to do those things, and the spirit is willing. And the body says, well, remember you fell down that mountain and you hurt your knee? Perhaps you shouldn't be doing that right now. So that's what's important. So anything that can do that, that's why the building in Second Life is so good, because it gets your creative juices flowing. You're moving. You're actually doing those things. I couldn't, raise rocks and create mountains. But in here I can exercise my brain. That stimulates my kidney. Kidney's about willpower, stamina, creativity. Very, very important. And that's nourishing. That's nourishing to the body. So all of this is to do with stagnation. Creative projects, painting, sculpting, woodworking, singing, really good for the heart. Really good. Any activity through which we can express natural creativity at our core. Many people, and I've just said this really, and this is in the book, are helped by Tai Chi, Qigong, or martial arts. And this channels what they call disruptive and stuck Qi appropriately, releasing our patterns of holding into freeing movement. Dietary approaches, light diet, simply pay particular attention to posture and tension while you're eating. Avoid difficult food combinations. Herbs and spices that help the digestion can be helpful. And he mentioned here clean liver, which is a really good physical support. And if you heard this before, you will have heard me say do not do liver flushes at any time other than spring. And be very, very careful when you do them, because if you've got gallstones and you flush them and they get stuck in the duct, you've got problems. So be really careful about what you do. I've had patients do that in my real life when they have a problem and they've gone to somebody locally who does colonic irrigation. So they obviously like having their bowel cleared out. It's obviously something that they get really turned on about. But when she starts doing it 2 or 3 times a week, I get quite concerned. I can't say very much other than here, but I feel that's excessive and extremely lucrative for her. But, that the system is very unlikely to be able to take that much. So do be careful when you go. Be really careful who you're seeing and how often and what you're paying for. Usually if they do that kind of thing to you, they should stick a probiotic patch up your anus and into your bowel to refloat the helpful flora and fauna after they've cleared it out. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do, but don't go and do these heavy flushes without knowing exactly what you're flushing. As my own father died of ruptured gallbladder, a portal vein, as a result of impacted gallstones. So do be very careful. Not that he did any of those things, but it's very important. So food combining can be very, very important. And my recommendation if you're food combining is that you don't eat protein and carbohydrate together. Try and keep your meals simple. I'm not saying don't eat either one of those things, but keep them separate. And thank goodness now America is now saying that, I think I did mention this last time, that saturated fat is okay, because KJ asked me what saturated fat was, and I said butter, basically. You know, don't eat any of this Flora Light and all these rubbishy oils they come out. Don't eat, we call it in England margarine. I don't know if you have margarine over there. My partner calls it margarine. But you need good, you know, old-fashioned stuff, really. In moderation, of course. So, I won't go on about that because I remember doing this last time. We did say the carrot was a simple, effective remedy for digestive stagnation. Very, very good for you. You could have soup and you could flavour it with some herbs like coriander, because carrot nourishes and soothes the digestive tract and it eases stagnation. So it's an ideal food. Ideal for babies as well, nourishing without congesting, mildly stimulating circulation of qi and blood. So after a meal, like a simple tea like fennel or jasmine, aniseed, dill or chamomile can reduce the tendency to stagnation following a meal, and you could have a small helping of pickles, which is quite good as well. When the large intestine is affected and the qi can be sluggish, a glass of warm water with a teaspoon of molasses when you get up in the morning can be helpful. Warm water alone is one of the best stimulants that you can have, particularly for bowels. Very simple remedy for babies who are constipated. And we did mention rhubarb, figs and cabbage as also being good for you. When the liver qi is stagnant, and that's a classic when you're sighing, you know it's your liver qi, a glass of warm water with cider vinegar and honey. I remember mentioning this again. Because qi and blood are closely interdependent, it's too fine a distinction really to put separate foods into lists for you. I could actually pull a list off here at some point. Daverick Leggett, who wrote this book, does actually have a list of foods that are good for different conditions, and he does it on a chart. So if ever anybody looks him up, Daverick Leggett, you'll probably find I think he is Meridian Press actually. So I was just looking at. So what was it you had? I asked you if you had it. Oh, margarine. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, margarine is not good for you at all. None of these light spreads, these light foods, anything with aspartame in them, anything that says it has phenylalanine products in there, you give it a wide berth. And I mentioned to stimulate the circulation of qi and blood, you can make a tea with equal parts of cinnamon, ginger and tangerine peel, and you simmer that until a third of the fluid's gone, and then you drink what's left, having sieved it. So that's a quick run through of what we did last week with the stagnation, and now I am coming on to the essence, and there isn't much of this, so we're in good time. So this is the third of the substances. Essence. Whoops, let me type it. Essence. So, according to the book, essence describes the inanimate physical substances that give rise to life itself. Just as organic life needs a particular composition of carbons and gases to be on the planet, so too the human body needs certain conditions and materials to grow and thrive, and when the essence is strong, life can thrive. Now essence is partly inherited from your parents and your culture, sorry, your ancestry. The prenatal essence is the rootstock or genetic inheritance which predisposes each one of us to certain patterns of growth and development, and it gives support through life. It's considered finite. Okay? Now, unless I'm barking up the wrong tree, I call it this. It's called Heavenly Jing. Spell it right. That's part of essence, pre-heavenly Jing. Pre-heavenly because it's finite, it's what you come in with. And when it's gone, it's gone. You cannot make it back. So if you expend it, waste it, and you lose it young, you're going to be struggling. As I said, it's a rootstock. It's considered finite, a precious substance, and it can be exhausted through wasteful lifestyles. Chinese medicine insists it must be conserved if a person is to remain strong and vital. Stored in the kidneys, transformed through the interaction of the 3 jiao, or the burning spaces which I described to you before. It can be accumulated through storing the subtle nourishment available from food and all sources that we've discussed previously. And what can be accumulated is called, and this isn't in the book, this is out of my head, pre-heavenly Jing. Okay, so pre-heavenly Jing, when it's gone, it's gone. Post-heavenly Jing, we can build by right lifestyle. You're doing good things, eating properly, resting appropriately, taking good supplements, and just generally looking after ourselves and our environment better. So, that's really always there for us to replenish as long as we're strong enough to do so. He calls it postnatal essence here. A weak constitutional inheritance can be considerably improved by persistent attention to receiving high-quality nourishment, leading a balanced lifestyle, and the more weak the inherited essence, the more need there is to practice containment and nourishment. So how do we nourish the essence? Well, just as the previous substance is twofold. The first is to conserve, learning how to be effective with least overspending of energy. Overdoing physical and mental work can deeply weaken the body's resources, resulting in premature aging if it's allowed to continue. Conservation of essence means avoiding substances that deplete it. These are excessive use of alcohol, excessive use of caffeine, recreational drugs, chemicals, preservatives used in food processing, microwaving protein, which I said to you before. Damage to the essence is also possible through the consumption of genetically manipulated food. And he actually does discuss this at the end of this book. For men, conserving essence may also mean ejaculating less frequency. Sorry, guys. You can make love to us, but you're not allowed to ejaculate. You have to just keep going and save it all. Very important, certainly as you get older, containing yourselves. If somebody is highly sexed and motivated, yeah, it's true. Well, that's right. But I'll get it for you one day. Actually, it's downstairs in the clinic. I quite often read it to my patients. It's quite a miserable list of what the Chinese expect. I mean, us ladies are expected to be past it at about 38, I think. We're meant to be toothless old hags that are all dried up and shriveled, past the age of fun for sure. Whereas the guys can go on a bit longer, but that's why they go for young women. I think I seem to have missed the boat somewhere because I do everything in reverse here. But the Chinese are quite clear about the amount of sexual activity you should have depending on your ages. And it's a very different story for men and women. But there is this thing about ejaculation which is really important. So they put a great emphasis on the amount of semen lost through ejaculation. And also there is a basis for that in Western science as well. They particularly say something in China about ejaculating when under the influence of alcohol. Very important. To have drunken sex is like the worst thing you could do. And if you conceive as a result of drunken sex, poor child, really. He says here, when the energy lost through ejaculation, when the heart is open, can flow back when the yin and yang polarities of each partner are aligned. Vital minerals concentrated in semen needing to be replenished when lost. Zinc, for example, highly concentrated in semen, and its lack has been identified as contributing to male infertility. Although women do not lose such concentrated fluids as men, dietary and lifestyle neglect can also diminish essence and lead to problems in their reproductive systems. Childbirth creates massive demands on a woman, and special attention to nourishment and rest need to be given to avoid essence depletion. So the first principle here is conservation, and the second is nourishment. And remember, it's not just food and drink, it's air, it's love, it's sensual, the spleen needs desperately to be massaged. So important. Such important nourishment. So learning to concentrate the breath as well in the dantian of the lower abdomen, very important way of nourishing essence. Meditative breathing practices are a primary way essence can be nourished, and a few minutes every day of attentive breathing will actually bring very much long-term benefits. Dietary approaches to essence. Food that nourishes the essence encompasses all vitamins, minerals, amino acids, enzymes and trace elements essential for life. So a wide diet is called for. Now, personally, I don't believe you can get everything you need these days from food. Most of our environments are so denatured. Your best bet is to find a really good company that sells really good vitamins and minerals. For me in England, I use a company called Higher Nature. I do that because I have a great respect for the way they market. They're the only company I've ever known put prices down when the market changes. Very helpful generally. And so we do take they've got a series called True Food, which is reckoned to be 10 times more powerful or stronger than the normal recommended doses. And we need them. Very important. So it is important, don't go down and get the cheapest you can possibly do, as many companies say, 365 days for, $10 or something. You just cannot get the quantity and the quality. It's no good saying, you can have A, B, C, D, blah, 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 because you need to really analyze the quantities of everything they're putting in. And then they bamboozle you with micros and milligrams, and you have to be a scientist to actually understand half of it. So all I know is that I've used these other things for years. They've always stood me in good stead. I do change occasionally. I add things, like I personally take something called Pycnogenol, which I'll type in local for you. P-Y-C-N-O-G, Pycnogenol, Pycnog. I've spelt it wrong. I think it's Pycnogenol. That's made from, should be made from pine bark. Don't touch it if it's not made from natural substances. It should not come from the petrochemical industry. And what that does is it's an antioxidant, very important. Stops you rusting up inside. I take those daily with a good supply of multivitamins. I add in extra vitamin E for myself, as good as a blood thinner. I add in extra B12. I add in CoQ10 for my heart, an extra dose of vitamin D as well. But again, important to make sure that what you're adding actually bolts on to your main multi, because if it's not in the right formulation, the body can't assimilate it. So very important. You know, I often have patients who say, oh no, I don't bother with multivitamins, I just take ginkgo, or I just take ginseng. Well, the problem is if you're taking ginseng and you're actually very yin deficient and hot, you could actually be stimulating yourself in the wrong way, and it could be quite bad for you. So just be very careful about what you dabble with when you take things. And if in doubt, ask someone who has a little bit of experience. You do, absolutely, and I'm not a herbalist, so I don't give herbal advice at all. I'm not a nutritionalist, but I do, and I do use things myself that I do know about. I understand, what I'm taking and why. So I know, for example, with the pycnogenol, there are no known side effects, and I've read about it extensively. The other thing that I've used, which is extremely good, is called serapeptase. I think, Michael, I told you about that. Serapeptase. I've spelt it wrong. Serapeptase is the enzyme that the silkworm uses to get out of its cocoon. It eats debris. So when you take serapeptase, you always take it on an empty stomach. I usually take big doses, and it goes through the system and clears away blockage, old damaged tissues, scar tissue, things that are obstructing flow. Very, very good. Very good for ulcers. There's a very good book out, actually. Can't think of the author now. It's actually called Serapeptase, the Miracle Enzyme. So all of these things are useful because anything, again, that clears you is going to be improving you, and that will improve your essence. Hi, Zircon. So very important, a good multivit. However good your diet is, you're going to need a good multivit and maybe some extra things as well. Another thing which is very good for you is to research MSM. I'll type it. Oops, hang on. I need to get my screen set up. I've gone into. There we go, MSM. Now, I think it's methyl sulfonyl. It's methyl sulfonyl. I think it's methate or something like that. You'll have to look it up. But it's very good for the skin, the nails. It's got fantastic effects for breathing problems, all kinds of things. Fibromyalgia, any kind of joint pain at all, really. There is a book as well called The Miracle of MSM, I think. A very good book. All these things are written by doctors, so they've been well researched. And again, you need to be careful of the sources. Just be very careful. And for arthritis, there's CMO. And I think I've told you before, that goes with the diet, which I think I've handed out. And that is, I think it's serisomal. I think this is right. Serisomal. I think it's cis9. I think it's. I don't know if this is right. It's serisomal cis9 ceramysteroliate. I couldn't spell it. I couldn't spell it if I tried, but that's the stuff for arthritis. And you need to look at that. As I say, don't spend your money on it unless you've tried their suggested diet. Because if you can't do the diet, it's not going to work. Yes, I know. But it's very good. This is stuff is tried and tested. And I've used it as well. Bought it for clients because I can get it cheaper for them. I think I can get 30% off usually. So I can pass that on to them. It makes it more acceptable to them. And it's, for some people, it's just cleared them completely. They have no pain, running around the golf courses. Usually they're older people that are trying it. So all of this stuff is worth researching and making sure that you have to get what's called the real CMO. And there is a book about it as well. So they talk here about seeds that contain all the elements necessary for the growth of plants and trees are good tonics for essence. And so too are plants from the sea, because of course the sea is the origin of human life, and these are rich in essential minerals. Bone marrow, which itself is produced from essence, is deeply tonifying, so any kind of meat stock made from the bones of animals is a good source. Other special foods include ghee. If any of you know about ghee, I'm sure you probably do. It's clarified butter, used a lot in Indian cooking. Almonds, pollen, microalgae, artichoke leaf and nettle, and a little raw milk is also helpful. Well, I don't know about that. I tend not to have any kind of dairy at all. Animal organs provide concentrated nutrition that can nourish the essence. So you do have to be careful again what you're eating these days, because there's so much done to food. If you're going to eat that kind of thing, yes, agreed. If you're going to eat that kind of thing, do go organic if you can. Just be really, really careful. Personally, I don't touch milk, and I haven't done for a long time, because milk creates a lot of phlegm, and phlegm and damp. And I live in a damp place, and I'm quite damp internally. So for me, I keep well away from anything like that that's going to make me damper. So again, I guess it depends where you're living really as to what your tolerance will be. Believe it or not, that it's only 10 to the hour, and we've actually finished what he has to say about essence, and I've added for you a lot of other bits and pieces as well. The next topic in his book, which I'd like to do, is discussing yin and yang, because they're really important. So I propose next week, I won't be able to do both of them, but we'll look at yin and yang next week. And after that we'll go into the climates, because the climates affect all of us dramatically. So we're going to be looking at wind and cold and damp, but we won't be doing that next week. And I'm just looking at what else is here, if it's useful. There is something in here about dairy. He says dairy foods are deeply nourishing, sweet and moistening, making them excellent qi and yin tonics. Not if you're damp. Their richness means they are very dampening, with a strong tendency to generate phlegm, which is what I just said. Anyone with a yang deficiency or damp condition should treat them with caution, and I say don't take them at all. pasteurized cow's milk can be problematic, probably the pasteurizing process responsible for some of the problems. The enzymes present are necessary for its digestion, and they are destroyed in pasteurization, which is exactly what KJ just said. So there's a big discussion. Dairy generally is a big topic. So we'll just keep it simple, and we'll look at yin and yang next week. Are there any questions? Of course, you've got me talking about the subject I love today, so I can wax lyrical about this. Yes, I'm sure, KJ, I'm sure you're right. You know, it's there's always the exception. The problem is those exceptions are quite rare, and people read something like that or they see it, and immediately they start knocking back the milk and then wondering why they have problems. Yeah, goat's milk is supposed to be better, I must admit. I do tell you repeatedly, don't go near soya milk. Keep away from soya products. Very important. So, anything else? Any other questions? Those of you that... Oh, Michael, thank you. Thank you very much for that donation. Those of you who've not heard, we have a person called Lightning... can't remember the name now. Lightning Spirit, who is actually logged out exactly where I'm sitting, home pointed here. He is a man called Darren Starwin, whose webinar I attended a few weeks ago, and I was so impressed I invited him in to speak here, and at last somebody has heard me out in the real world and they've come in. So we're having a conference tomorrow. I'm going to try and help him to activate his voice. All he wants to do is log in, sit here and talk. And I do recommend, if you get the chance to hear him, do come and hear him, because he knows his stuff. He's a genuine good healer. Yes, he wants to promote his work outside of Second Life, and yes, he's in California, and a lot of people in Second Life will probably be able to access him personally. But from my point of view, the information he was giving out was very good, and I was delighted to talk to him about this, and even more delighted when he said he'd give it a try. So if you do see him here, he's never actually done anything. He gave me the avatar. I made it in half an hour or so and sat it here. But we're looking forward to him talking. And he does some chanting as well. So he's got... he has to bingo. Well, I don't think so, actually. Not sure if he'll have the time. But who knows? Well, we'll see. We just have to impress him with how genuine we all are. And the other thing I just wanted to say is the Monday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday meditations are all going well. We had a great time today. There weren't very many people, but there were more people coming. I think the time is what gets some of us. I know it's not always easy for me. But it was a great session. So I do recommend, if you get the opportunity at 9 a.m. in the morning, do come into one of the meditation sessions. I was at the Monday one, but unfortunately I didn't have my sound activated, so I didn't actually hear what was said. But the parts of today that I heard were good. And last week's Thursday and Friday sessions were fantastic. heart operation. So we were all laid up together. But well, the locum decided my practice wasn't lucrative enough, so he was pulling in my patients more often, and obviously charging them, and they didn't like it very much. So gradually, I think I lost about half my practice, and then I wasn't really well enough to pull them back in. And of course, once you've lost them, they're not going to come back anyway. So, but it wasn't his fault. It was obviously, I say, well, it was meant to be. That was the position at the time, and those people had to move on. But yeah, if you don't have the people coming through the door, they can't go out looking brilliant and talk about what you do. So gradually your work diminishes. So I am going to love you and leave you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining us. Sorry you missed us, Abel, but we'll be back tomorrow taking another look at chapter 24 of the Tao Te Ching, which was living without excess. So I'll see you in the meditation center tomorrow.